Hey everybody, welcome to the Real Estate Pacifier. Today I'm going to talk about kind of what I went through when I bought my first short-term rental. It was a very interesting thing. So I had flown to Denver from Austin and I had an appointment in Inglewood, Colorado really early the next morning. And instead of staying at my house that I was living at the time up there, I decided, I'm just going to get a hotel because it was a super early meeting. And when I went on Priceline, that's where I go to book hotels, or I used to. Went to Priceline, I looked, and I could not find any hotels within, I think 15 minutes, 15 miles or so from, where my meeting was at. I was like, "That's really interesting." So, I ended up getting a hotel close by because my house is pretty far away, and I was in this space of considering buying my first short-term rental, and I thought, I was like, there's 2 hospitals right here. Both of them are kinda long-term care hospitals. There's a lot of redevelopment going on. There's some really cool restaurants coming up, some bars, things like that. But this might actually be a pretty good spot for a short-term rental. It doesn't seem like it, but there's people that would need to stay here that are in long-term care or maybe family visiting them. You had some, there's kind of attractions coming up with, like, the local bars, things like that. And, we also had some really cool music venues and stuff. So, I ended up deciding, you know what, I think I'm gonna make a move on something, but I was pretty nervous about it. Like, how's this gonna go? Uh, is it actually gonna rent? At the time, there wasn't near as much data out there, as there is today with things like Rabu and AirDNA, things like that. And so I ended up looking for a property that not only I thought would work for location, because location's everything in real estate, but it is everything in short-term rentals. And without a whole lot of experience, I wanna make sure I got that location right, but I also wanted to make sure that it would work not only as a short term, but a medium term and a long term rental in case the short term thing didn't work out. The other thing that was really interesting about this was I was thinking to myself, if this works, man, I can rent this thing out while I'm not in Denver. It can make money, pay for the house, and then I'll actually have a place to stay that's in a pretty central location, be very convenient. So that was kind of the premise that I was going on, but I was also looking at what zoning codes look like. And the reason for that was at the time, the city, this was Inglewood, it's just right outside of Denver, did not have any type of permit process in place. So nothing was regulated, and that actually scares me more than when there is regulation, because if there's already a permit process in place, there's a really good chance that if they came down with some other type of regulation that was going to prevent more short-term rentals, you'd probably be grandfathered in or something like that. So when there's not any type of permit process in place, that actually makes me really nervous, and that made me nervous then too because I didn't know what they were going to actually come up and do. And so with that, I chose a property that was really had this like mixed use zoning. So in part of in that zoning was that you had permitted uses of hotel, you had bed and breakfast. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, if they ever come back and regulate this, at least I can fall back on that as a permitted use. So bought the property and got it up on Airbnb, Verbo, and it started doing really well. I was like, "This is awesome." I was traveling up there, I got to use the property. It was a cool little house. It was about a block away from some really cool bars, restaurants, things like that. Great location. So I bought the property, it's doing well. Then all of a sudden, we got this letter in the mail, and the city was coming down on short-term rentals. They wanted to ban them altogether. Um, they then started to have these city council meetings, which I flew up to attend those to get involved because it's huge. And then they went to, okay, it's gonna be your primary residence only. If it's your primary residence, then you can do short-term rentals, but if it's not, you can't. So I actually had a meeting with a couple of city council members and told them, I said, look, my zoning code here has hotel and bed and breakfast as a permitted use. So why is this zoning code being included in this regulation or requirement for it to be your primary residence in order to operate? And they actually agreed, and so they wrote that into the regulations for the city of Inglewood, which still stands today. If you're in this zoning, uh, you're okay, and it's actually M2 zoning, M1 and M2 zoning. And so we got through that, and which was great because I could still operate, I could still use it when I was flying up to Denver. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit. And so I'm like freaking out because we went to 0 overnight. We had all these bookings, and then all of a sudden people can't fly, can't travel, they're just wearing masks. And so I'm freaking out because I had other rental properties where people weren't paying rent. And it was pretty scary because of the location, because of the diverse guest pool, especially my first one, which is why I really, really recommend your first rental property. You get something that has, it's not just tourism, it's remote work, it's travel nurses, uh, things like that, things that are kind of recession proof, if you will. And it was really good because I got on one of the travel nurse medium term rental websites, and I actually got 3 different sets of nurses, that were traveling, for about 9 months, so that held me over through COVID, and once everything opened back up, started, doing the whole short-term thing again, and that did really well, so that was my first one, and that's what I love about short-term rentals is, like, for me, it was just having a place to travel, save money on, hotels, being in a more central location, but then also, having that thing cash flow and make money. But I think on your first one, you gotta look at the buyer pool. You gotta get something that's a little bit, smaller. Uh, the price isn't as high. Look at the utilities. Is it an older house? What are those little nuances? What's the property tax rate? What are the regulations around it? And what's your intent to use it? What's your expectation? What's your plan B? What's your plan C? Uh, I had to use plan B. And if I didn't have a plan B, it would have been really, really bad. And so those are all things you really need to consider when you're buying your first short-term rental. And I'd love to hear comments. I'd love to hear questions that maybe I could help answer that we love going through this stuff and getting creative. But your mindset when you buy that first property, especially if it's your first investment property overall, is just so crucial. If you're thinking about buying one and it's keeping you up at night, you're super nervous about it, then don't buy it because your mindset is so, so important. So when those things happen, whether it's a regulatory thing or it's a kind of like the black swan event, right? Like COVID, if you already have that plan B, that plan C in place, it's so much easier to shift and to move because the market's fluid. Things like that shift. And so when you have that preemptively, it's so much easier to do that in the moment as opposed to just kind of freaking out and just spinning. So again, if you have any questions, comments, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear your stories, but that's kind of how mine was on the first one. I hope that's helpful, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.